Hi, my name is Jacelyn, and the book that I decided to do for my new media project was George by Gino, and it was published in 2015, and it was also named the number one most challenged book in 2018, but it's also been on the list for most challenged books a couple of times before. And the book tells the story of a young transgender girl who prefers to go by Melissa, but is known to everyone else around her as George, and she wants to play the role of Charlotte in Charlotte's Web for their class play, but is ultimately unable to because her teacher doesn't let her audition. And the reasoning behind that is because the role of Charlotte is only for girls, and everyone, including her teacher, sees her as a boy. Um, the story essentially follows her journey with her gender identity and getting others to see her the way that she sees herself. And I ended up choosing this children's novel because of the character of Melissa, and the focus on her struggles with gender identity were something that deeply resonated with me because of my own experiences growing up as a transgender man. And um, as a transgender individual, like, I haven't always seen good media surrounding the topic, and it was really nice to see that the story of Melissa was portrayed really positively. And I know that if I had grown up with books like George in my library, like, that would have really helped me a lot in my experiences and feeling less alone. And I think it's kind of sad that the things that drew me to the book were also the same things that caused it to be one of the most frequently challenged books. And some of the reasoning seems pretty ridiculous to me because the reasons for banning it included mentions of dirty magazines, description of male anatomy, and the belief that it would encourage children to clear their browser history and change their bodies using hormones. And one instance of censorship was during the 2018 Oregon Battle of the Books, I believe, where it was included on a reading list. And this Battle of the Books is a voluntary statewide program, but the inclusion of George on the list led to two school districts in Oregon to restrict participation, at least on an elementary school level, because they felt that it wasn't appropriate for that age range. And I personally felt that this was pretty counterproductive because it's important to have conversations about these topics at such an early age. And the perspective of the book is also from the eyes of a fourth grader, so I don't see why other fourth graders should be restricted from a character that is their age just because of the basis of the discussion on gender identity and similar issues. And there were also further attempts by like a group called 1 million Moms, that's part of the American Family Association, to get Scholastic to stop publishing the book entirely, which was ultimately unsuccessful. But I think that even though I get why some parents might think that this isn't appropriate, the ultimate message behind George is important and can help kids to be more understanding and less discriminatory towards like their peers and especially towards their LGBT peers. And stopping the production of a single book isn't going to stop kids from being exposed to these issues anyway. And I think it's really important to spread like these positive messages rather than letting these kids discover like really more hateful influential messages that they might encounter online. And considering the amount of like violence against like trans women already, I think it's important to have like books like George kind of show them in a more positive light, or trans girls in general, because it's like we already have situations such like Dwayne Wade's daughter Zaya, or Zaya, sorry if I mispronounced that, but she's already facing attacks from like all sorts of people and especially adults. So I think it's critical for books like George that talks about the experiences of like young trans girls to continue to be read to encourage acceptance. And so I'm gonna read an excerpt from the first chapter of the book. And well, alright. As she tipped the denim bag on its side, the silky slippery pages of a dozen magazines fell out onto the tiled bathroom floor. Covers promised how to have perfect skin, 12 fresh summer haircuts, how to tell how do you like him, and wild winter wardrobes. George was only a few years younger than the girls smiling at her from the glossy pages. She thought of them as her friends. George picked up an issue from last April that she had looked through countless times before. She browsed the busy pages with a crisp flip, flip, flip that stirred up the faint smell of paper. She paused on a photo of four girls at the beach. They modeled swimsuits in a line, each striking a pose. A guide on the right-hand side of the page recommended various styles based on body type. The bodies looked the same to George. They were all girls' bodies. On the next page, two girls sat laughing on a blanket, their arms around each other's shoulders. One wore a striped bikini, the other wore a polka dot one piece with cutouts at the hips. If George were there, she would fit right in, giggling and linking her arms in theirs. She would wear a bright pink bikini, and she would have long hair that her new friends would love to braid. They would ask her name, and she would tell them, "My name is Melissa." Melissa was the name she called herself in the mirror when no one was watching, and she could brush her flat reddish-brown hair to the front of her head as if she had bangs.